35. Rare Wild West photos that reveal secrets history tried to hide. What if I told you that some of the most extraordinary photos of the Wild West were never meant to be seen? Images hidden away for decades, too raw, too shocking, or simply too unusual for history books. From legendary outlaws like Billy the Kid, whose fearless stare still haunts the dusty trails of New Mexico, to fearless women like Pearl Hart, who stunned the world by robbing stagecoaches when only men were expected to break the law, and even forgotten snapshots of Native American leaders, miners, and cowboys, each picture whispering a secret story of survival, rebellion, and dreams under the endless western sky. These are not just pictures, they are fragments of a time when danger and opportunity lived side by side, when every shadow could hold an outlaw, and every sunrise promised both hope and heartbreak. Today, we will uncover the rare and forbidden photos of the Wild West, images that reveal not just faces, but untold truths of an era that shaped America. So, saddle up, because what you're about to see might change the way you imagine the Wild West forever. The Wild West was not just a place, it was a state of mind, a frontier where chaos and opportunity collided under an unforgiving Sunday. In the late 19th century, the American West became a vast stage where every player, outlaws, sheriffs, pioneers, cowboys, and native tribes struggled for survival, power, and sometimes glory. Imagine towns rising overnight from dusty plains, built on nothing more than the promise of gold or silver. Streets lined with saloons echoing with laughter, drunken songs, and the sharp clatter of poker chips. Outside those doors, lawmen and desperados faced each other in tense standoffs, where a single pull of a trigger could turn a name into legend. For Native American tribes, this was a time of upheaval. Ancient traditions clashed with relentless expansion, and photographs captured both the dignity of their resistance and the sorrow of their displacement. Meanwhile, women of the West, once expected only to cook, clean, and care for families, began carving their own destinies, sometimes with rifles in hand, sometimes on stage, dazzling crowds with skills that defied society's rules. The camera lens became a silent witness to it all. Each rare photo from that era is more than an image. It's a frozen heartbeat of history. Some show moments of triumph, cowboys bathing in rivers after months of cattle drives, or settlers celebrating the first railroad that stitched the country together. Others reveal a darker side, prisoners forced from their homelands, outlaws wearing masks of defiance, and saloon dancers hiding sorrow behind painted smiles. This was an America in transition, wild, untamed, and unforgiving. Yet within that chaos, stories of courage, betrayal, resilience, and rebellion were born. And it is through these rare and often forgotten photographs that we can step back into that world to witness the West as it truly was, raw and unfiltered. 1. Billy the Kid, the outlaw who became a legend. Few names in the Wild West strike fear and fascination like Billy the Kid. Born Henry McCarty in 1859 inches, New York, he was not destined for greatness but for infamy. After moving west as a boy, he quickly fell into a life of cattle rustling, gambling, and deadly gunfights. What made him unforgettable was not just his crimes, but the reckless charm that earned him followers and enemies alike. His youthful face, barely out of adolescence, contrasted with the violence that followed him. Every rare photo of Billy the Kid feels like a haunting echo, a reminder of a boy who grew into a legend and a legend who burned out too soon. 2. Pat Garrett, the sheriff who ended an era. Every outlaw needs a pursuer, and Billy the Kid found his in Pat Garrett, sheriff of Lincoln County, New Mexico. The two were locked in a deadly dance of chase and escape. On the 14th of July, 1881, that dance ended. Garrett tracked Billy to Fort Sumner and shot him, sealing his fate. But Garrett's victory was bittersweet. He was forever tied to the man he killed. The photo of Pat Garrett is more than just an image of a sheriff. It is the face of law in an age where law barely existed. His story reminds us that even heroes of justice carried heavy burdens, haunted by the shadows of the men they brought down. San, Pearl Hart, the woman who defied the West. When people thought of outlaws, they imagined rugged men with revolvers. But in 1899, Pearl Hart shattered that image. Born into a wealthy, educated family, her life could have been ordinary. Instead, she escaped an abusive marriage and carved a name for herself by robbing stagecoaches near Phoenix. Her boldness shocked society, a woman in the Wild West wielding a gun, demanding money, and writing her own destiny. Photographs of her show not just defiance, but a rare spark of independence at a time when women were expected to remain silent. 4. Annie Oakley, the sharpshooter of the century. If the Wild West had a queen of precision, it was Annie Oakley. Born Phoebe Ann Mosey in 1860, she grew up in hardship, but discovered an extraordinary gift with firearms. At just 15, she won her first shooting competition. Later, in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, she stunned audiences by firing backwards over her shoulder, using only a mirror to aim. Every rare photo of Annie Oakley carries the same message: skill, grace, and a quiet strength that defied stereotypes. She was not just a performer, she was a symbol that women could stand shoulder to shoulder with men in skill and courage. Quanah Parker, the last great Comanche chief. Among the fading embers of Native American resistance rose Quanah Parker, son of Cynthia Ann Parker and a Comanche warrior. He became one of the last great chiefs, remembered for leading his people during the turbulent final years of independence. In the Battle of Adobe Walls, he stood against buffalo hunters invading traditional Comanche territory, a symbol of defiance against unstoppable change. His rare portraits capture dignity in the face of loss, a man standing between two worlds, his mother's European heritage and his tribe's sacred traditions. 6. Calamity Jane, the wild woman of the plains. Clad in buckskins and riding with fierce energy, Calamity Jane blurred the line between myth and reality. Famous for her sharp tongue and wilder spirit, she became a fixture in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, thrilling crowds with her daring horsemanship. Yet behind the legend was a woman shaped by hardship, loss, and survival. Photos of her performances reveal more than entertainment. They show a woman who lived life on her own terms. In an age when women were supposed to be restrained, Calamity Jane exploded with untamed freedom. 7. Wyatt Earp, the lawman of legends. Few figures embody the Old West myth like Wyatt Earp. Known as a deputy marshal in Dodge City, he cemented his place in history after the legendary gunfight at the Oakley Corral in 1881. In the Arizona Territory, Earp and his brothers faced off against the Cowboys gang in a deadly shootout that echoed across the frontier. His rare photos show a calm, stern man, but behind that gaze was a storm of violence, justice, and survival. Wyatt Earp was more than a lawman. He was a walking contradiction, respected, feared, and forever mythologized. Inside a miner's cabin, life in harsh reality. The gold rush of the 1,890 seconds promised fortune, but for most miners, it delivered only hardship. A photo from Colorado shows the stark simplicity of a miner's cabin: rough wooden walls, crude furniture, and little else. Life was grueling. Long hours underground, little pay, and constant danger. Yet the cabin stands as a symbol of ambition, the dream of striking it rich. These images remind us that the Wild West wasn't just about outlaws and sheriffs, it was also about ordinary men risking everything for a chance at gold. 9. Jesse James, the rebel outlaw. After the Civil War, Jesse James turned his restless spirit toward crime, leading the infamous James Younger gang. Banks, trains, and stagecoaches all fell victim to his daring raids. To some, he was a ruthless criminal. To others, a Robin Hood. Like hero standing against a broken system, his photos capture a man with unshakable confidence, a symbol of rebellion in a divided America. Jesse James's legend endures because he wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing headlines, turning himself into a figure larger than life. 10. Geronimo, the face of resistance. No image of the Wild West is more haunting than that of Geronimo, the Apache leader. In 1884, one of the first photos of him was taken at the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona. For decades, Geronimo led raids and resisted U.S. expansion, embodying the last breath of Apache freedom. His eyes in the photo carry a weight that history books cannot capture: sorrow for his people, defiance against oppression, and the dignity of a warrior who refused to surrender easily. To see his photo is to meet the living spirit of resistance itself. Buck Taylor, the king of cowboys. Dressed in flamboyant cowboy attire, Buck Taylor became one of the most beloved showmen of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Nicknamed the King of Cowboys, he dazzled audiences with his roping skills, horseback stunts, and undeniable charisma. Unlike many who lived harsh frontier lives, Buck Taylor turned cowboy culture into theater, creating the image of the cowboy that still survives in movies today. His rare photos are not just portraits, they are the blueprint of the cowboy myth. crafted with flair and charm. 12. Cowboy life, hardship on the trails. For cowboys, life on the trail was brutal yet unforgettable. A rare photo shows them bathing in rivers after months of cattle drives across vast plains. These journeys stretched nearly 3 months, pushing both men and animals to their limits. Dust, hunger, and exhaustion were constant companions. Yet there was also freedom, the wide-open sky, the bond of brotherhood, and the dream of reaching the bustling cattle towns. Such images reveal cowboys not as romanticized heroes, but as hard-working men enduring endless miles of grit and sweat. 13. Saloons, the beating heart of the West. Step inside an 1,885 saloon, and you step into the soul of the Old West. Photos of these dimly lit rooms capture gamblers huddled around poker tables, music spilling from old pianos, and whiskey flowing freely. Saloons were not just drinking halls, they were hubs of social life where travelers, lawmen, outlaws, and women mingled. Here, alliances were forged, rivalries sparked, and legends born. Every saloon photo reminds us that the West was as much about human connection as it was about survival. Chassis, Olive Oatman, the girl with the blue tattoo. In 1851, young Olive Oatman's life was forever changed when her family was attacked in Arizona. Captured first by the Yavapai and later adopted by the Mojave, she grew up within native culture. Photos of Olive show the striking blue tattoo on her chin, a Mojave tradition marking her as both survivor and outsider. Her story is one of tragedy and resilience, a reminder of how the West blurred the lines between cultures, forcing individuals to live between worlds. 15. Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen. No outlaw woman captured imaginations quite like Belle Starr. Pictured on horseback in 1886, she lived among infamous figures like Cole Younger and Jesse James. Known as the Bandit Queen, she dressed with flair and carried herself with commanding confidence. Unlike many female figures of the era, Belle did not hide behind men. She stood with them, equal in cunning and courage. Her rare photo is more than an image, it is a declaration of power in an age when women were rarely given any. 16. Fanny Porter, the Madam of the West. In the late 19th century, Fanny Porter became one of the most respected madams in the Wild West. Known for her discretion and strong character, she earned the trust of powerful outlaws and lawmen alike. Her photo reveals a woman of poise and authority, standing out in a world dominated by men. Fanny's saloon brothel was not merely a place of pleasure, it was a sanctuary of secrets, where whispers could change the fate of fugitives and sheriffs. 17. Mary Fields, the fearless stagecoach driver. Born into slavery in Tennessee in 1832, Mary Fields was freed in 1863 and carved her own destiny in Montana. Working on ranches and eventually becoming a stagecoach driver, she earned respect for her toughness and skill with horses. Standing over 6 feet tall, armed with a revolver and a shotgun, Mary refused to be intimidated. Her photos radiate strength, showing a woman who broke every boundary of race and gender. To the West, she was Stagecoach Mary, fearless, unstoppable, and unforgettable. Shabbat, Doc Holliday, the gambler dentist. John Henry Doc Holliday seemed destined for a respectable life. Born in Georgia in 1851, he studied dentistry and graduated with honors. But tuberculosis sent him west, chasing a dry climate and a chance at survival. There he reinvented himself gambler, gunslinger, and ally of Wyatt Earp. His rare photos show a man with refined features yet deadly resolve. Doc Holliday's life was short, scarred by illness, but his legend lives on as one of the most notorious figures of Tombstone. 19. Big Nose Kate, the woman behind Doc Holliday. Known to history as Big Nose Kate, Mary Catherine Horany was more than just Doc Holliday's companion. Born in 1850, she worked as an actress and dancer before drifting into the rough towns of Arizona. She lived fiercely, unafraid of scandal, and her photo captures a woman hardened by the wild frontier. Kate stood by Doc Holliday during turbulent times in Tombstone, embodying the chaos and unpredictability of the Old West. She was not simply a shadow of famous men, she was a survivor in her own right. 20. Apache life, a shift from resistance to survival. A rare 1,893 photo shows Apache people handing hay bundles to settlers in Arizona. By then, their traditional lands were gone, and survival meant adapting. These images remind us of a painful truth. Even the fiercest warriors had to find ways to live within a world that had conquered them. Yet in their faces, dignity endures. The West was not just stolen from them, it was reshaped at their expense. 21. Kit Carson, the Trailblazer. Kit Carson was a fur trapper, guide, and soldier who left his mark on nearly every part of the Old West between 1830 and 1860. Known for his work with explorer John Fremont, Carson also acted as an Indian agent, often mediating between tribes and settlers. But his story is not without controversy. He participated in campaigns like the Navajo Long Walk, remembered for its cruelty. His photo is a complex symbol of discovery, of conflict, and of the price paid for expansion. 22. Frederick Loring, the gentleman journalist. Not all who ventured west carried guns. Frederick Wadsworth Loring, a Harvard-educated journalist, traveled with George Wheeler's expedition in 1871 to map the Western Territories. His photograph, taken in Arizona, shows a refined young man amid the rugged frontier. Loring's writings captured both the harsh beauty and the human struggles of the West. He represents the intellectual curiosity that pushed beyond the comfort of cities to witness history unfolding on the edge of civilization. Arshisan, Buffalo Bill, the showman of the West. Few men turned the Wild West into spectacle like William Buffalo Bill Cody. In 1899, his Wild West show toured the world, reenacting hunts, battles, and cowboy life with stunning theatrics. Photos of Buffalo Bill in his trademark fringe jacket and wide-brimmed hat made him an icon. He blurred the line between reality and performance, transforming real history into legend. Through his shows, the myth of the West spread far beyond America's borders, shaping how the world still imagines it today. 42. Killer Jim Miller, murder for hire. In the late 19th century, James Killer Jim Miller became one of the most feared gunmen in Texas and New Mexico. Unlike hot-headed outlaws, Miller was cold, calculating, and professional. He reportedly charged $150 for an assassination, a deadly sum in his time. His rare photos reveal nothing of his ruthlessness, but his reputation speaks volumes. In a land of lawlessness, he turned killing into a career. 25. Native camps, circles of tradition. A 19th century photo of a Lakota camp shows teepees arranged in circles, honoring their traditions. These camps followed the buffalo, the heartbeat of their survival, providing food, clothing, and shelter. Unlike the chaotic boomtowns, native camps were built on balance with nature. The photo captures not just daily life but an entire worldview, one that was systematically threatened and eroded as settlers advanced. 26. Miners and the Silver Boom. Photos of Virginia City, Nevada, in 1888 capture miners emerging from shafts, weary but determined. The discovery of the Comstock lode in 1859 triggered one of the greatest silver rushes in history. Cities erupted almost overnight, filled with saloons, theaters, and opportunity. But life underground was perilous, with accidents and disease claiming lives. These photos are stark reminders that behind the wealth of the West lay the sweat and sacrifice of miners. 27. Oklahoma Territory, birth of a new frontier. In 1893, a rare photo shows U.S. Marshals posing with clerks outside the land office in Perry, Oklahoma. The territory was being carved into settlements, drawing thousands who rushed to claim land. The photo reflects the birth of a new order, where law, bureaucracy, and ambition collided. The Oklahoma land rush became one of the defining moments of frontier expansion, chaotic, hopeful, and deeply symbolic of America's hunger for land. 28. Apache prisoners, a vanishing freedom. Another haunting photo from 1886 shows Apache prisoners beside the Southern Pacific Railway in Texas. Forced removals and confinement stripped them of their homelands, leaving them weary but unbroken. The image is striking, proud warriors sitting in defeat, yet carrying a silent strength. It is a reminder that the conquest of the West was not just about lawmen and outlaws, but also about the suffering of nations pushed aside. 29. Texas Rangers, the Iron Hand of the West. In 1885, the Texas Rangers posed for a studio photo. These men were tasked with maintaining order in one of the most violent regions of the frontier. They fought criminals, defended borders, and often clashed with native tribes. The Rangers became legendary for their toughness, their loyalty, and their relentless pursuit of justice. Their photo symbolizes both protection and brutality, embodying the contradictions of law in a lawless land. 30. Gold Hill, a town built on gold. In the 1,870 seconds, Gold Hill, Nevada, rose from the dust like so many mining towns of the West. Photos show trains cutting through rocky landscapes, carrying ore and hope in equal measure. Houses and mines dotted the rugged terrain, evidence of a feverish rush for fortune. Yet Gold Hill was more than commerce, it was community, with families, schools, and saloons shaping daily life. Each photo freezes a moment when ambition outweighed the dangers, and the lure of gold transformed barren land into bustling towns. Sanchi, the Crabtree family, children of the frontier. A rare photo around 1,890 captures the Crabtree family in Arizona, with two children standing proudly beside their father and hunting dogs. Living near the Four Peaks Mountains, they called a region ominously nicknamed Hell's Hip Pocket their home. The image shows more than family pride. It reflects the resilience of children who grew up among rattlesnakes, dust storms, and endless horizons. These children weren't just playing on the frontier, they were being shaped by it. 32. Central City, the boom town in the mountains. In 1859, Central City, Colorado, exploded with life during the gold rush. Photos depict streets squeezed between steep mountains, filled with miners, merchants, and drifters seeking fortune. The town grew rapidly, complete with theaters and bustling markets, earning the nickname, the richest square mile on earth. Central City's photos remind us that behind every Wild West legend stood towns born of hope, thriving briefly before fading back into history. 33. Brothels of the North, women in a man's world. Around 1,890, photos from Alaskan brothels reveal women posing in cramped rooms decorated with velvet curtains and worn furniture. The gold rush brought thousands of men north, creating a world where women were outnumbered and often exploited. These brothels were more than places of vice, they were spaces of survival, where women navigated danger, loneliness, and fleeting power. Their photos whisper stories of hardship hidden behind forced smiles. 34. Jimmy McKinn, the boy who chose, the Apache. In 1885, 11-year-old Jimmy McKinn was kidnapped by Geronimo's Apache group. When the Apaches were later captured in 1886, Jimmy shocked everyone by declaring he wished to stay with them rather than return home. His rare story reveals the deep bonds he formed, proof that culture and family could transcend blood. His tale, preserved in photographs and testimonies, reminds us that even in conflict, humanity could bloom in unexpected places. 35. Virginia Bright Cigarettes, advertising the frontier. An 1,888 advertisement for Virginia Bright Cigarettes shows how even the Wild West was touched by marketing. Companies used eye-catching imagery and bold slogans to capture consumers' attention. These ads, frozen in time, reflect not just tobacco sales but the birth of modern consumer culture on the frontier. In a land of rough saloons and dusty trails, even a cigarette pack became a symbol of sophistication. 36. The Transcontinental Railroad, connecting a nation. Perhaps no photo symbolizes progress more than the 1,869 image of workers celebrating the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad at Promontory, Utah. For the first time, the east and west coasts were connected by steel and steam. This achievement forever changed America, shrinking distances and fueling commerce. The image of workers raising their tools in triumph is not just a snapshot of victory, it is the birth of a new, united nation. Sanchi, the Deadwood Stagecoach, roads through danger. A striking photo shows the Deadwood Stagecoach winding through mountain trails in South Dakota, passengers dressed formally even as danger lurked around every bend. Stagecoaches were lifelines of communication and travel, carrying mail, money, and people across unforgiving landscapes. Yet they were also favorite targets of bandits. Each photo of a stagecoach is a reminder of the courage or desperation it took to ride them. Sanchi, the Shamrock Saloon, where the West gathered. Captured in 1905, the Shamrock Saloon in Hazen, Nevada, reveals the heart of social life in small frontier towns. Wooden walls, crowded tables, and bottles lined on shelves. This was where deals were struck. Games were played, and tempers often flared. Saloon photos capture laughter and sorrow alike, showing the Wild West as more than just violence. It was also about community, fleeting friendships, and nights of escape from the harsh daylight. 39. Cowboy attire, leather chaps, and frontier fashion. A photo from Caldwell, Kansas, reveals a cowboy proudly wearing leather chaps, rugged gear essential for protection against thorns, rocks, and the brutal weather. Inspired by designs from Mexico, these chaps became iconic symbols of cowboy life. Such images highlight the practicality of frontier fashion. Every piece of clothing was built for survival, yet over time it became a badge of identity. In these photos, we see not just clothing, but the birth of the cowboy image we still celebrate today. 40. Timothy O'Sullivan, capturing the silver boom. In 1867, photographer Timothy O'Sullivan captured the Savage and Curry mines in Virginia City, Nevada, part of the Comstock Lode, the richest silver deposit in U.S. history. His stark black and white images reveal both grandeur and grit, towering mine structures and endless piles of ore. Through O'Sullivan's lens, the Wild West becomes more than myth, it becomes tangible. A place where men gambled their lives for fortunes hidden in stone. 41. Okanogan children, riding a cow to school. In 1907, in the remote town of Okanogan, Washington, 7 children rode to school on a single cow. The photo, equal parts humorous and touching, shows the creativity of frontier families. With little money for horses, they improvised. The image captures the innocence of childhood, set against the rugged backdrop of the West, where even the smallest details reveal both hardship and resilience. 42. Brule Village, harmony with the plains. A photo of the Brule, Lakota village shows teepees scattered across a wide valley. For generations, the Lakota lived in rhythm with the buffalo herds, moving as the seasons demanded. The image reflects a harmony between people and nature, a harmony soon disrupted by expansion. These photos preserve a way of life that was nearly erased, reminding us of the beauty and fragility of cultures tied to the land. 43. California land auction, dreams under a tent. In 1904, settlers gathered under a large tent in Imperial Valley, California, for a land auction. The photo reveals eager faces, papers in hand, each person hoping to claim a piece of fertile ground. Land was the ultimate dream of many pioneers, the promise of stability after years of wandering. This snapshot of anticipation shows the hunger that fueled the transformation of deserts into towns, farms, and futures. 44. Hot Springs, South Dakota, a bathhouse of luxury. Not all photos of the West show hardship. The Grand Bathhouse in Hot Springs, South Dakota, built to harness the healing powers of natural springs, became a symbol of leisure and elegance. Carriages parked outside, visitors seeking rest inside the image, contrasts sharply with the dust and danger of the frontier. It shows that even in the Wild West, people longed for comfort and refinement. 45. Buffalo Hides, Mountains of Death, a chilling 1,878 photo from Dodge City, Kansas, shows nearly 40,000 buffalo hides stacked in a yard. The West's hunger for profit decimated the buffalo, the very animal central to native life. This image is haunting a mountain of hides, a monument to destruction. It symbolizes not just economic exploitation, but the devastating cost of expansion. Saloon, vineyards in California. The West's other gold, around 1,870 photos from the Buena Vista Vineyard Society in Sonoma, California, show men corking champagne bottles. The frontier was not only about cattle and mining, it was also about agriculture. Vineyards thrived, producing wines that hinted at the West's future as a land of abundance. These images remind us that pioneers were not just dreamers of gold, but builders of lasting legacies in soil. Saloon, railroads in Arizona, tracks of progress. In 1898, photos show men laying railroad tracks across Arizona's arid lands. Railroads were veins of steel that carried life into the frontier. They moved cattle, goods, and people, linking the remotest settlements to the rest of the nation. Each photo of these workers, bent under the desert sun, reflects sweat and determination, the human force behind America's greatest expansion. Sushaba, Perry Water Tower, organizing a new town. The first water tower in Perry, Oklahoma, rose in 1893, just after the famous land rush. A photo captures the moment of its construction, a milestone in transforming raw land into community. Water was life, and its presence marked stability, drawing families and businesses. The image stands as proof of how quickly the West turned chaos into order. Saloon, Buffalo Soldiers, heroes of the frontier. After the Civil War, African-American regiments known as Buffalo Soldiers served in the U.S. Army. Photos show them in uniform, determined and dignified, stationed in the rugged frontier. They fought in the Indian Wars, built infrastructure, and brought law to isolated settlements. Despite discrimination, their courage carved an indelible mark on the history of the West. Their photos are tributes to resilience in the face of hardship. Whoosher, Buffalo Bill's ticket wagon, selling the Wild West. Around 1,890 employees gathered around a ticket wagon for Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. The photo reveals the scale of his empire, a traveling spectacle with riders, native performers, and sharpshooters. This wagon was not just selling tickets, it was selling the myth of the West itself. Each rare image of the show captures a world where history and performance became one. Wuxi, bars and card games, the social battleground. Photos of Wild West bars show more than whiskey and laughter, they show tension. Men sat around poker tables, their faces lit by lamplight, cards in hand, eyes sharp with calculation. Games like poker and faro weren't just pastimes, they were battlegrounds of luck and pride. In these photos, we see strangers becoming rivals, fortunes won and lost in the flick of a card. The saloon was the arena where the West's restless spirit played itself out. 52. Soapy Smith, the king of the con men. In 1898, during the Klondike Gold Rush, Jefferson Soapy Smith ruled the town of Skagway, Alaska. A photo shows him in a bar he owned not just a saloon, but the headquarters of his elaborate scams. Smith tricked miners out of their fortunes with fake businesses and rigged games. To some, he was charming. To others, a predator. His photo freezes the face of greed in a land already overflowing with desperation. Wuxia, Apache dancers, spirits of the Southwest. A rare image captures Apache dancers in ceremonial masks, invoking spirits of the underworld. These rituals carry deep spiritual meaning, uniting tribes in prayer and celebration. While settlers often dismissed them as spectacles, the photos preserve a sacred truth. The Apache held onto their identity through dance and tradition, even as their world was being stripped away. Wuxia, Oklahoma Land Rush, a stampede for dreams. On the 22nd of April 1889, nearly 50,000 people surged forward at noon, racing to claim 2 million acres of newly opened land. Photos show a sea of wagons, horses, and determined faces. The Oklahoma Land Rush was both chaos and opportunity, families staking claims, fortunes made and lost in hours. The photos remind us of the West's central theme. Land was wealth, and thousands were willing to gamble everything for it. Wuxia, Tollgate Saloon, the miners' retreat. In 1897, the Tollgate Saloon in Black Hawk, Colorado, became a haven for miners seeking escape from long days underground. Deer heads lined the walls, and whiskey flowed as men laughed, gambled, or argued. Photos of such saloons reveal the rhythm of mining life: hard work, brief joy, and the constant search for relief. Wuxia, the bullet dance, terror for amusement. One haunting photo shows armed men in a Wyoming saloon forcing another man to dance as bullets struck the floor at his feet. Known as the bullet dance, this cruel game turned fear into entertainment. Such images reveal the darker side of the West, a place where life was cheap and cruelty could pass as fun. Wuxia, Buffalo Bill's crowds, a theater of the West. Another photo shows Native Americans and settlers gathered outside Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. They waited not for war, but for entertainment. Buffalo Bill's spectacles blurred reality, dramatizing battles and cowboy life for eager audiences. These crowds remind us how the myth of the West was packaged and sold, even while the real frontier was vanishing. Wuxia, Kitty Wilkins, the horse queen of Idaho. At the turn of the century, Kitty Wilkins stood out as the only woman in America making her living as a horse dealer. She famously sold 8,000 horses to the British Army, earning wealth and respect in a man's industry. Her rare photos show elegance combined with grit, proof that women could master the toughest trades of the West. Wuxia, Seth Kinman, the frontier craftsman. Hunter Seth Kinman became famous not just for his hunts, but for the unusual chairs he crafted from bear skins and elk antlers. A photo from 1889 shows him in his bar in Table Bluff, California, surrounded by his creations. He even presented such chairs to U.S. presidents, including Abraham Lincoln. Kinman's image reveals the eccentric characters who turned frontier survival into art. Lucia, Bill Brazelton, The Masked Robber. In 1878, William Brazen Bill Brazelton donned a mask to rob stagecoaches around Tucson, Arizona. His disguises made him infamous, but his career ended in a deadly clash with lawmen. His rare photo, wearing the mask, captures the eerie aura of a man who lived and died in the shadows of crime. 61. Women of the Brothels, Shadows of the West. Photos from the 1,890 seconds show young women in brothels across the frontier, Pennsylvania, Alaska, and beyond. They sit in plain rooms, sometimes smiling, sometimes defiant. These women were survivors in a world with few choices, navigating danger and exploitation. Their images speak to the untold half of Western history, women whose stories were hidden in whispers and shadows. 62. George, Big-Nose Parrot, the Outlaw Unmasked. Captured in 1878, George Big-Nose Parrot was a cattle thief and train robber whose crimes caught up with him. A grisly detail of his story is that, after his execution, his skin was turned into shoes, preserved as macabre relics. His photo, stern, unsmiling, symbolizes the brutal justice of the West, where crime often ended not just in death, but in humiliation. 63. Masked Women, Faces of Mystery. One haunting photograph shows a woman wearing a mask and bonnet, her identity hidden. In the West, masks served many roles: for anonymity, for theater, or for survival. This image is more than curiosity. It embodies the secrecy and double lives many led on the frontier, where appearances could mean the difference between safety and ruin. 64. Goldie Williams, Defiance in Chains. Arrested for vagrancy in Nebraska in 1898, Goldie Williams, also known as Mag Murphy, stared defiantly into the camera. Her mugshot shows a woman hardened by life, refusing to bow. Photos like hers reveal the raw truth of women in the West, often trapped by poverty, yet unbroken in spirit. 65. Bill Doolin, the last of the outlaws. Born in 1858, Bill Doolin led one of the most notorious gangs across Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arkansas. His photo shows a determined man who lived fast and died young, hunted by lawmen until his violent end. Doolin's story closed the chapter on the great outlaw era, a reminder that legends of the West often ended in blood. The photos that were never shown. While many rare photos of the Wild West survive, some of the most fascinating images were deliberately hidden, censored, or forgotten. Not because they lacked importance, but because they revealed truths too uncomfortable for their time. One such case involves photographs of buffalo slaughter fields in the 1,870 seconds. We've all seen the famous stacks of hides, but what most history books left out were even darker images, acres of rotting carcasses stretching to the horizon. These photos, rarely published, told a devastating story. The extermination wasn't just about profit, it was a calculated attempt to starve native tribes into submission by destroying the animal at the center of their lives. To show those images then would have forced the nation to confront the cost of expansion. So many were quietly buried in archives. Another example is the portraits of native prisoners taken under military guard. Some of these photographs were staged to portray captives as broken, submissive figures, but hidden among them are rare shots where warriors stared directly at the lens, eyes blazing with resistance. These unfiltered moments were often excluded from exhibitions because they contradicted the image of conquered tribes that authorities wanted the public to see. And then there are the photographs of ordinary women of the frontier: laundresses, seamstresses, widows, and single mothers who worked to keep families alive. Unlike the glamorized brothel portraits, these images were dismissed as unimportant, yet they reveal the true backbone of the West: resilience, dignity, and survival against impossible odds. What's striking is not just what these hidden photos show, but what their absence created. By silencing the harshest realities, the mass destruction of buffalo, the unbroken pride of native prisoners, the quiet labor of forgotten women, history shaped the Wild West into a tale of adventure and heroism. The truth was more complex, more human, and often more tragic. To rediscover these suppressed images is to confront the West as it really was: a land of opportunity, yes, but also of exploitation, resistance, and forgotten voices. The Wild West was never just a story of cowboys and outlaws. It was a place of extremes of courage and cruelty, hope and despair, freedom and loss. Every rare photograph we've uncovered is more than an image. It is a window into a world that shaped the very idea of America. We saw boys like Billy the Kid become legends, women like Annie Oakley and Calamity Jane defy every expectation, and native leaders like Geronimo and Quanah Parker stand unbroken in the face of impossible odds. We witnessed miners chasing dreams, saloons echoing with laughter and gunfire, and families carving fragile lives out of raw earth. These photos remind us that history is not just written in books, it is etched into faces, frozen in moments, captured in the light of a long-gone frontier. To look at them is to feel the dust, the danger, and the dreams of a world both brutal and beautiful. If these stories moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because the past still has secrets waiting to be revealed.